When my older kids were teenagers, sometimes they would come to me and ask for permission to do something. But sometimes they would say, "Dad, I don't want to do it. I don't want to go. But I don't know how to say no to my friend. I don't know how to have that conversation with somebody that is a friend of mine. I don't want them to get offended. I don't want them to get their feelings hurt. But I don't want to do it." So I would tell them the magic line, just say, "My dad said no." And that is your out. That is your opportunity to say, you maintain your friendship with somebody. But if there's a situation and you feel like, hey, this is going to compromise me, this is going to put me in a dangerous situation or in a place that I don't want to be, maybe around people that I don't feel safe, or doing something that I know I shouldn't do, but I still want to be friends with this individual, and hopefully encourage them to do what's right. How do I get out of that? And they would just say, "I'm sorry, but my dad said no." So now if you look at the Old Testament, what the Jews call the Tanakh, there's 613 commands in the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible. 613. And sometimes we can look at that and really freak out. That's a lot. It's a lot to remember. So a couple things with that. First, 300 plus of those are not even able to be followed anymore because they revolve around the Levitical priesthood. They revolve around the sacrifices and things that you're free from having to worry about because the context for obeying those commands doesn't even exist anymore. So the 613 is really boiled down to 300 or so. But still, we can look at that and go, holy moly, how in the world can I obey, let's say, 300 commands? That's a lot of commands. Do you know how many commands are in the New Testament? For those of you who are Christians, do you know how many commands exist from Matthew to Revelation? If you are a follower of Jesus Christ, do you know how many commands there are? Over 1,000. Over 1,000 commands in the New Testament alone. Sometimes people act like Jesus just simplified everything. He made it so much easier for everybody. The New Testament makes it, carte blanche, easy peasy. And we only have to love God and love our neighbor as ourselves. Then you're not reading the whole New Testament, because the whole New Testament has over 1,000 commands for you as a follower of Jesus Christ to follow. And the reason some of them are so specific now is because there is the letter of the law and then the spirit of the law. And so you can obey the letter of the law, but as Jesus pointed out with some people, they were violating the spirit of the law. He would say things like, the law says, the Torah says, do not murder. Yet, if you have hatred in your heart towards a brother, you've committed murder in your heart. And so he was taking the letter of the Torah, these 613 commands, and he was helping people see what the spirit behind the Torah was. What was the Torah really getting at? If you have hatred in your heart, you're committing spiritual murder. If you have lust in your heart, you're committing spiritual adultery. Even if you don't cheat on your spouse physically, you're cheating spiritually on your spouse. But how do we, as Christians, how do we obey all of these commands? How do we remember them? How do we obey them? And sometimes we feel like, hey, I want to do what's right. I want to obey God. I want to obey these commands. I want to do what's right. But sometimes it's so difficult. And I'm pulled, my fleshly desire pulls me to do these bad things, or the temptation is there and it's so strong sometimes. And I don't want to give in, but I feel weak. I don't want to do what is wrong, but I still feel drawn so strongly. And I don't know how to defeat the enemy. And this goes back to the story I said at the beginning. All you have to do to that temptation is just say, my dad said no. I cannot do that. I cannot give in to this temptation. So regardless how strong of a pull it can be, that's all you have to respond with. My dad said no. You're going to be tempted to lie, cheat, steal. You're going to be tempted to hate somebody. You're going to be tempted with lust and all of these other things. But the only response you have to have is, my dad said no, so I'm not going to do it. because my dad said no for a reason. He said no to protect me. He said no because he knew the inherent danger behind giving in to whatever that is, and that it wasn't going to be for my benefit. It was actually going to be detrimental to me. And so when I'm faced with this temptation, sorry, my dad said no.